Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.
Hello, welcome to minute 70 of the podcast Awake Minute by Minute. I'm today with Mike, Nick, and Grace. Nick, you were with us in minute 15 with your twin, but today we just have you. How are you, Nick?
I'm good, thank you. It feels nice to just show up without my twin. It's like, because when I'm with her, I'm slightly tweaked because of her presence. So let's see how this goes.
Nick, just before this call, I was just telling her that she's replacing Chris because Chris is gallivanting in Europe for a few weeks, so he'll have little or no connection. And Nick graciously offered to attempt an Irish accent in and out of this conversation, so our listeners don't feel too much like they've missed him. So anytime, Nick, you want to throw in that accent, please do.
Oh my God.
And we are also with Grace. How are you today, Grace?
I'm well. It's so nice to be here. I'm excited.
Grace, for those who may not have met her, she's with us for the Young Adult Sangha. She's volunteers in various capacities, but many of you will probably know her because she was in the Young Adult panel during the recent convocation, the 2022 convocation, which was a completely new thing that Self-Realization Fellowship did. It was like Brother Sivananda and 4 young adults in a panel conversation. And some of you won't know that this happened because the video is only available, I think, Grace, you can correct me, to young adults that have logged in through the app or the website. So Grace, tell us what was that like? How did you get involved?
I'm not really sure how I got involved, to be honest. I was asked to do it and I was excited. I was going to be volunteering originally in front of the live audience as I was going to convocation. But then with COVID, of course, it was moved to an online format. And I think it was slightly less nerve-wracking to be pre-recording the talk versus speaking to a large live audience. It was a great experience, but it was an honor to serve in that way. And I'm really excited to see the future because I feel like this was just the beginning. And, it reminded me just of our young adult Sangha meetings and all the meetings we have. It really, as was mentioned in the doc, it could have been anyone. And it just felt like, once again, we're having a meeting, we're discussing spiritual topics. And it just happened to be me this time for some reason. And next time I'm really excited to see, this idea unfold and evolve. And I think it's going to be a really good way to actualize the young adult community.
So for those that didn't or weren't able to watch it, it was pretty much quite similar to the conversation we're having now, but obviously guided by a monk, which was Brother Sivananda, as opposed to a rookie such as myself or Mike. So it was very, very, very devotional, and Grace spoke very, very eloquently, I thought, on all those very complex subject matters that Brother Sivananda asked the group to talk about. Mike?
I also love that Brother Chidananda brought it up afterwards in the final talk, right? Because he said he got so many responses from other devotees, also older devotees, right? Who felt like if this is the next generation, then we're set, we're good, right? That made people feel very optimistic about everything.
Indeed. And so Grace, tell us, so did you say it was supposed to be done in front of the live audience, that whole thing?
Yeah, originally it was going to be a panel, just like a regular talk, and we were going to be in the California ballroom.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not in front of the 2,000 people. It would have been a smaller one, or would it actually have been the full audience?
I'm not sure how many people fit in the California ballroom, but it would have been a lot.
Okay, fine. Tell the audience where and how you met Guruji.
Well, my parents met Guruji actually. They found the path a few years before I was born. So my sister and I grew up attending convocations and summer day program. And, I appreciated my parents. They never, pushed the path on my sister and I. They just like set that example. And I'm definitely very grateful to have had that support, through the tumultuous waves of childhood. So I don't have one of those stories, at least that I can remember in this life, of, heroically finding Guruji after the seeking. It was more brought to me, and I'm grateful for that.
Very nice. Mike?
I just wanted to have a follow-up question to that, because it was the same for me. Like, I got to Yogananda through my parents, but did you feel like there was a moment at some point in your life where you felt like, okay, at this point, my parents brought me this far and now I have to make it my own? Or was that always the case for you?
Well, there were definitely times and like years when I was more serious or less serious, just like depending on how kind of involved I was in other things. I was really involved in music for a while. And I think I started the lessons when I was 12. And so then that helped me kind of start to get in a routine and make the habit to meditate, more regularly. And I think kind of my personality is I'm pretty diligent, I would say. And so that, it wasn't, the discipline kind of came more naturally to me, to where meditation kind of became a routine part of my life. But there were definitely times when I was more serious and less serious. And then, after life bats you around a little, then you're like, okay, I gotta be serious again,
Nick?
Yeah, I actually had a question. The moment you said you signed up for the lessons when you were 12, I actually wanted to bridge a relatability here, because I signed up for the lessons when I was 15. And like, the funny thing is, like, we're barely kids. And how did you persist in letting yourself like understand all these complex philosophies? Because I feel like at that age, you'd be like, is this really like something we should like put into our mind right now? So, but I feel like, it's something that's been given to us for a reason. But how did you choose to stick to it at that age?
Well, I think my mom really helped me. We read the lessons together. And so it was kind of, well, she had already taken the lessons, but she read them with me. So it was kind of a comforting thing to me, because it was like my time with my mom, and we would read the lessons together and study the lessons together. And so I think definitely credit her to keeping me going. And then of course, convocation, those were always like inspiring times, kind of the motivation. And then I would have motivation to continue the year. Same with summer day program. That was the precursor to young adult Sangha. And it was the first time that I had these spiritual friends and people who I felt like I connected with on a deeper level. So it was like the almost instant bond. You might only know that person for a week, but I felt closer to those people than I did to any of my friends back at home. So I think it was a lot of those things that helped me with the motivation to continue forward. As far as like understanding the topics, I think that's always a challenge sometimes, because we're approaching this from an analytical perspective, and it's something that has to be experienced. So understanding the topic, sometimes that was challenging, and sometimes I would misinterpret things or misunderstand things. And it's been this gradual unfoldment where slowly, as you read and reread the teachings, then you realize, oh, I didn't understand that before, but now I do. I have that perspective. Or I also took advantage of seeking monastic counseling, and that helped me a lot too. Just those more grounded spiritual seekers who have so much perspective.
Very nice. So you were 12 when you signed up. Nick was 15. And Mike, how old were you when you signed up for lessons? Because I was like 19 or 20, I believe. Still in my teens, I hope. No, I don't think I was actually. Yeah, go on.
I wonder if I can look this up. I'm not really sure. I was a teenager as well. I think 15 sounds about right.
I think you can on the lessons pledge card or whatever.
Yeah,
or
that's what I don't have. I have my I have another card, but I don't have. I don't know if I have my lessons card anymore. Shame.
Yeah, shame. Anyways, let's go to the minute. Otherwise, we could talk for an hour just having a nice, gentle conversation about life as opposed to the subject matter, which is minute 70. And minute 70 really has two elements. It has Anita Goel, and she talks about the impact of Einstein on the world of physics and energy and matter, and then brings in that elusive subject, that consciousness, and mixing that in there, which is something that science has been trying to grapple with even up to this day. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then the narrator talks, which is Anupam Kher, as Paramahansa Yogananda, talks about what the limitations of the mind are and how it must be liberated to experience those potentially higher states of consciousness that Anita Goel introduced the subject onto, rather than focusing on gross pursuits and destructive pursuits, such as the mindless destruction that is emphasized in the minute and the last minute with the atomic bomb, and in this minute as well, which we have some images that kind of reflect that as well. So thoughts on Nick, how did you feel after you watched that minute and prepared for this podcast?
The thing is that when I watched it, I was like so caught up with different things, but based on my memory, I feel like it's a reflection of what's going on right now, because if you look at like your spiritual influencers right now, they are talking about like they're trying to appeal spirituality to the mass public, which is mainly linear and logical. So they're like, how could I bring this woo-woo subject and make it sensible for others? So I feel like it's basically a reflection of our current state of consciousness as a spiritual community. So I was pretty happy to just witness it.
Interesting. The Einstein references and the picture of Einstein in this is a really cool picture. I think all Einstein pictures are pretty cool, aren't they? Which is saying something for like a typical, old man scientist looking guy. Yeah, Grace.
Yeah, I loved the Einstein connection in this. Just the idea, his equation that energy and matter are equivalent, it, I guess, would scientifically prove what spirituality has maintained for so long, that essentially everything is energy and consciousness. And I think approaching that, as somebody who is living in a world where matter is so prominent, it's almost like a fairy tale. It's hard to grasp and understand that really the only reality is energy and consciousness. But in this world of matter, it doesn't seem like that. Everything is so, in front of our faces, and we're so absorbed in that. I love it. Made me think of this quote of Guruji's, where I think he says something like, well, gradually the unreal will become real. And so I really, really liked the Einstein connection here, and just tying in that piece of the union of science and spirituality.
Mike?
I think we said that before, right, in other minutes, that Guruji had to come at exactly this moment in time, because the understanding of people 100 years earlier just wasn't there. They wouldn't know what energy is. And I feel like Einstein was one of the many helpers, one of the many precursors who came in and kind of set the stage for Guruji then to take advantage of all this kind of scientific development. So people can actually say, Yogananda is saying that, and here is science proving it. There's like one cool sentence I liked in the autobiography about Einstein. Yeah,
No, Mike,
says,
unless we might be reading that out already.
From the autobiography? You sure?
Yes, it is. But you can go.
Okay.
You can go. And if it is, then Yeah,
then
go.
I will be punished severely after the episode.
Everyone's jumping the Einstein gun. You mentioned Einstein, and look at what happens.
It is an exciting topic. It's just one sentence, and if we read it again later, then we can talk about it again. But it just says, with a few equational strokes of his pen. Is that the one?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Better finish it. We'll remember it for life now.
No, well, no. Well, it's a cliffhanger. We'll hear the rest of the sentence later on.
So with a few strokes of his pen, what happens? We don't know.
What happens?
Nick.
Okay.
I just wanted to just tie in, when he said when Mike said that when Guruji came in like a specific moment of time, like, I don't know, just like my mind just exploded for a hot second, because let's say if Guruji wrote his stuff in like the 14 or 1600s, I don't think we would have been able to even comprehend what he was trying to say, because I feel like if we look at your traditional texts like the Bible or Bhagavad Gita, like you have to read between the lines. Whereas because Guruji arrived in that specific age, he was able to use the metaphors of the industrial age and the technology at the time. And surprisingly, it's still relevant for us today to comprehend what he was saying, So it makes absolute sense that there is a rhyme and reason for everything. And it is important for avatars to descend upon this realm in specific times to share the knowledge just with people in specific states of consciousness. So I was like, oh my God, like this makes so much more sense, because let's say if we also, not only that, let's say if Guruji wrote something in the language of the 1900s, let's say if we gave it to somebody in the 1400s, they'll be like, no, I don't know what this is like witchcraft. But then they're forgetting that they won't be able to connect that this is actually the knowledge that they know. It's based on how it was packaged and given to them. So I wanted to just point that out.
Very true. Let's read some of that, the wording Guruji used on this subject and how he referenced Einsteinian thought. So Mike, do you want to open the Einstein card? And Mike was actually...
I love miracles.
No, the Einstein card on that. Yeah, so that's chapter 30. Yeah, that is the law of miracles. And surprisingly, that is the exact quote that you were going to reference. So go.
With a few equational strokes of his pen, and now we continue, Einstein banished from the universe every fixed reality except that of light. Isn't that a great sentence? Einstein has reached across the ages to the rishis who proclaimed a soul fabric of creation, a protean Maya. On the epochal theory of relativity have arisen the mathematical possibilities of exploring the ultimate atom. Great scientists are now boldly asserting not only that the atom is energy rather than matter, but that atomic energy is essentially mind stuff.
Indeed, yeah, I totally agree. That is one heck of a sentence. With a few equational strokes of his pen, Einstein banished from the universe every fixed reality except that of light. Nick, do you want to carry on?
Sure. And it continues in his famous equation outlining the equivalence of mass and energy. Einstein proved that the energy in any particle of matter is equal to its mass, or weight multiplied by the square of its velocity of light. The release of the atomic energies is brought about through the annihilation of the material particles. The death of matter has given birth to an atomic age. Light velocity is a mathematical standard, or a constant, not because there is an absolute value in 186,300 miles a second, but because no material body whose mass increases with its velocity can ever attain the velocity of light. Stated in another way, only a material body whose mass is infinite can equal the velocity of light. That was a mouthful.
Yeah, I thought you'd handle it well, and you did. But to put that into context, 186,000 300 miles per second. So like, that's like, say we got the Earth, that's like 5 Earths. Light can traverse that in 1 second. So that gives you some context of how fast that is, and some other context. Even though the sun feels like it's very far away, which it is, it actually takes 8 minutes for the sun's light to come to our eyes. So like, we're actually looking back in time as we see the sun, because that was 8 minutes ago. So we don't actually know what's happening at the sun right now at this very second, because we're looking back in time. Anyway, Grace, carry on.
All right, it continues. This conception brings us to the law of miracles. Masters who are able to materialize and dematerialize their bodies and other objects, and to move the velocity of light, and to utilize the creative light rays in bringing into instant visibility any physical manifestation, have fulfilled the lawful condition. Their mass is infinite. The consciousness of a perfected yogi is effortlessly identified not with a narrow body, but with the universal structure. He who knows himself as the omnipresent spirit is subject no longer to the rigidities of a body in time and space. The imprisoning rings pass not, have yielded to the solvent. I am he.
Which also is related to that chant, I am he, blessed spirit, I am he, which is a lovely, lovely chant. In Sanskrit is Shivoham, Shivoham, Shivananda Shivoham, which is a famous one as well in India. Mike?
Yeah, what we just read is kind of from a, I'm glad that Yogananda actually picks this up and puts this into context. And this whole idea that your mass can be infinite seemed, to me, that seemed absurd, kind of, right? In our kind of material world, if my mass was infinite, then I would be everything. But that's kind of what he's saying, right? Right, and it's very difficult to comprehend in a kind of space-time kind of way, in like my physical body being infinite or anything like that. So if we talk about physics or space travel, for example, we see this theory of relativity as one of the big limits that keeps us from exploring space, right? Because if we can't even reach light speed, and even if we could, it would take years and years to go to any other star, right? So
light years.
Light years, yeah, exactly.
No, that's a distance. You can't say that. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is as difficult to comprehend as it is some of the masters that are talked about in the autobiography of a yogi, isn't it? I mean, some of the, just we read about Mahavtar Babaji, and we're obviously in awe and of reverence and state of devotion, but to actually comprehend what what he's doing in some of the miracles that he's performing, and also just his mission is phenomenal, isn't it? It is as incomprehensible as what this equation that Einstein got on his board, and what he's famous for, E equals mc squared, is. So I think it's a good parallel. Einstein, I remember when I was a kid, my earliest memory of Einstein was in computer games. You'd have to try and so you go back in time, and you'd have to try and steal Einstein for your team. And then if you steal Einstein, then you're going to be the most technologically advanced team. Command and Conquer, for those of you geeks that will remember that. Mike probably does. Nick and Greta definitely don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
This is good. They're providing balance on an otherwise quite masculine podcast. There's an even split on this fine day. Right. So then, yeah, Nick.
I just wanted to just chime in really quick. I feel like a lot of scientists in the Einstein era, I mean, I feel like I don't think Tesla was around Einstein, right? Or was he around the same like century as?
I think he was before, yeah.
yeah, before the
Mhm.
century of Einstein. I feel like I want to give a shout out to Tesla as well, because he talks about energy, frequency, and vibration, and how that has an effect on matter and energy. And I feel like Tesla is misunderstood by the general public, and I feel like Tesla walked so Einstein could run. And you can connect the dots and you can connect the dots with these physicists and how they're actually saying the same thing. Like even Walter Russell, for example. I don't know if you've heard of Walter Russell, but his stuff, I think when Tesla found Walter Russell's stuff, he was like, no, this era is not ready to receive your knowledge. Wait for like another 1,000 years. So just wanted to shed some light on that.
Definitely. This chapter on the law of miracles and the passages we've just read out is just it's a mind-blowing chapter, isn't it? Literally. And everything is so like cohesive, because when people talk about miracles, they have to talk in ambiguities, don't they? But here he talks about it in such scientific language that pretty much even a scientist would struggle to refute these claims, because we can't comprehend what infinity is. So if he's saying that mass has to be infinity, then you can't refute that, because you can't disprove that. So it's quite a thing that he's done in terms of defining the laws of miracles here. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, and he kind of builds on it, right? A lot of the things he later on says about field theory are built upon relativity. And I feel like sometimes we have this idea that relativity is like this final theory that explains a lot of things, but it, like the way Yogananda sounds like, it's more like the beginning of something, and we still have much to learn, right? Like we're just scratching the surface.
Indeed. So let's talk about Anita Goel now. And Anita Goel is the famous physicist that she was obviously been in this before. And she talks firstly about energy and matter. And then she talks and brings in consciousness. So let's separate these two things and talk about energy and matter, first of all. Firstly, let's talk about prana then, as Guruji defines and talks about it, and then we'll perhaps talk about how that leads on to consciousness. So Nick, do you want to read the message I just sent you on
Sure.
prana?
Sure. The universal prana, underlying all combinations in creation, is the basis of unity that has prevented the one spirit from being I cannot say this word.
Irrevocably.
Thank you. Thank you. Split into many. It pervades all atoms of the universe and every place in the cosmos. It is the primal, direct, subtle link between matter and spirit. Less spiritual than the Great Spirit, but more spiritual than the material atoms. This universal prana is the father of the so-called forces, which spirit, in its immanent form, utilizes to create and sustain the universe. Prana is an intelligent force, but has no consciousness in the empirical nor transcendental sense. It is the basis of the empirical consciousness, but soul is the conscious unit. Soul through ego dictates, and prana, its servant, obeys.
Wow, pretty deep and well read again, Nick. You're getting the difficult readings today. Grace, do you want to continue?
The next passage says, prana, neither grossly material nor purely spiritual, borrows from the soul its power of activating the body. It is the power lodged between soul and matter for the purpose of expressing the former and moving the latter. The soul can exist without prana, but the prana in the body cannot exist without a soul as its substratum.
So these are basically passages from. I'll put a link to these passages for you to consume in a more slower pace, perhaps late in your time. But Mike, do you want to reflect?
No. I actually just have a question. What does substratum mean?
So there's strata. Strata
All
is
right.
initial. Substrata is obviously the under. This is the kind of thing we have to like. We have to. It's a good question. We have to generally keep a dictionary with us whenever we're reading Guruji's stuff.
Yes.
And
Please provide a
Amazon,
glossary with this. Yeah.
Amazon Kindle does a good job of helping us read
Mm.
Guruji's work, because you can literally just highlight and define the words. But the problem with that is you may not get very far, because you'll be highlighting and defining a word every other sentence. And then there'll be words inside that definition that you need to look up, and then it will be an endless lookup project. So then Anita then hints at consciousness, which becomes quite an interesting link, because people don't generally put energy, matter, and consciousness in the same line. But Anita, being a biologist and a physicist, or physician and a physicist, has seemed to not taken any, and she's obviously also proved it in her research, which you can read about, and we discussed her in a previous minute as well. Mike, do you want to? So let's talk about consciousness as a broad term now, because it covers 3 tiers, and we'll go from the most subtle, which is cosmic consciousness, to the Christ consciousness, to the grossest, which is our physical consciousness. And I'll use Guruji's words to define each of those layers, or the substratas, Mike, if you will. So Mike, do you want to start on the cosmic consciousness element?
Well said. Okay. Just as the river has a source, so the river of consciousness has a source. It descends from cosmic consciousness, the consciousness of God that is beyond all creation. When cosmic consciousness comes into the realm of matter, into each of the atoms that make up the planets and island universes, and the different forms of plant, animal, and human life, that consciousness is called Christ consciousness.
Nick, read to us about Christ consciousness, please.
Yeah, sure. When you begin to feel the sensations of others as though they were happening in your own body, you are developing that Christ consciousness. When you cultivate this consciousness and therein understand that everything is yours, you will have no prejudices about race or color. In that consciousness, you feel that love of a million mothers in your heart, not just for a few, but for everyone. You do not imagine it, you feel it. This is the love that Jesus, Krishna, all the great ones manifested, this universal intelligence and love, which is called Christ consciousness. And it says me in the brackets, which I love saying, because you can like make this quote your own, which is so sweet.
So it's not a typo then, me.
No,
it isn't. I absolutely love this idea that we connect to Christ consciousness when we deeply love, or we deeply pray, or we deeply have, deeply feel for others, and then feel others as if they were our own. And Guruji makes that such an emphasis of our practices, doesn't he? And this just really defines it as the first quite high elevated step of attuning with the Christ consciousness, and through that to cosmic consciousness, which is what our goal is. Mike?
There's a story about this in the autobiography of a yogi, where Shiv Teshwar asked Guruji during his ashram training about if he loves everybody equally. And then the first time, I don't remember the answer he gave the first time, but it wasn't satisfying Shiv Teshwar. And Guruji later explained that he still had differentiated in his mind between the love for his little brother that he loved so dearly and other people. And then a few weeks later, when Shiv Teshwar asked him again, his answer was just, I love. and that satisfied him then. So I think this is the spirit.
Can I test you? Was that before or after his experience in cosmic consciousness?
I think it might have been just before.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
it would make sense for it to be before, because that would be a precursor, wouldn't it? That state of consciousness would be a precursor to cosmic consciousness, which is an epic chapter, by the way. I'd highly recommend it. Chapter 14 in the autobiography. Nick?
Just before I jump into my point, I wanted to say that it makes sense that it's before the cosmic consciousness, because he said I love, and I actually gives acknowledgement to the ego, whereas cosmic consciousness would just be like love itself. So just wanted to add that. But I wanted to add is that, you know, we're talking about prana and consciousness and thoughts and feelings and transcending the human nature, and I feel like there is physical residue. Like our body is electric, and energy, you know, is manifested through electricity, which is also light. So just to tie that up and just to, like, you know, leave the listeners thinking, it's that everything you do, there is residue left behind energetically, and you're like, you know, I don't know if, I feel like you guys have read it, that's like it's more than one body that you have. So like your thoughts and feelings are very much alive in one of your bodies. So, you know, nothing's like too separate from you too. When we read all these things, you know, we don't think it's our own, but something further, but it isn't. So yeah.
And I'm reminded, as you say that, I'm reminded of, because both Grace and I have been a bit sick for the last week, and I was reading some of the, I can't remember which talk it was in the convocation, but I think you mentioned if you're sick, don't ever say that I am sick. Say this body is sick, because every time you say I am this or I am that, that's not your essential or your ultimate nature. You're kind of, it's like this negative affirmation that actually, you know, opposes what you're trying to achieve through our sadhana. Yeah, Grace?
I think that's, I have not listened to that talk, but I think it might be a little hard for my friends to understand if they ask how I am and I just respond, this body is sick.
But wouldn't that if you did say that, it's factually it's correct, right? Because it is the body that's sick, and then it can spark a bit of a potentially a spiritual conversation. Not that you'd want to do that with every conversation you have with people, but
I'll have to give it a try. I think that's a great idea.
Mike?
Yeah. So what you just said is like basically it would be a negative affirmation if you would say I am sick, and if you say the body is sick, it's like more like neutral, I guess. And then you can also reverse it, right? You can use affirmations to heal yourself. Like there's this book, Scientific Healing Affirmations, that I use a lot whenever I feel anything, and it's like my level 1 support before I go to the doctor. I use that book, and I feel there's also more to that. There's the consciousness of a mantra, but then there's also, you can use your consciousness to put energy somewhere. Just you tense a hand, like and then the energy goes there, and the energy, the prana is an intelligent energy that actually tries to heal you. So there's also an exercise in that book where it says tense the area near there and stuff. And I don't want to go too much into it because a lot of it is also covered in the lessons. But this is the power of consciousness that can eventually also heal you.
Nick, if I had, if we were just, you know, having a conversation and I was very sick and you asked me, oh, how are you? And if I'd responded saying, our bodies are sick, how would you react to such a radical statement?
You know, that's exactly when somebody says, how are you feeling? I was just like, oh, I just feel, you know, and it depends on my mind to decipher it as something good or bad. And they're like, yeah, okay, sure. So if you say that, I'd be really happy because it's like, you know what, that's a natural conversation I want to acknowledge.
Yeah.
So
By the way, the health and healing talk was called Health and Healing: A Spiritual Perspective, and it was given on this year's convocation, and it was given by Brother Saralananda. So if you want to go through that, it's a really epic talk. Grace, do you want to tell us, so we talk about our bodies being sick, let's talk about human consciousness now. So we've done cosmic, Christ, and now let's do just consciousness.
I actually have the reading on super consciousness.
Oh, do you?
Yes.
No, that is correct. When consciousness descends.
When super consciousness descends into the realm of imagination, it is called subconsciousness. When subconsciousness descends into the muscular and sensory phase of human life, it is called human or waking consciousness. Meditation is the method of realizing the connection between one's body circumscribed life energy and the infinite cosmic energy of God, the connection between the conscious and subconscious states, and the cosmic consciousness of God.
I like that Grace thought that she had the wrong consciousness, because as you get to the end of that reading, it kind of like the ultimate is really just one, isn't it? And it's just that our awareness goes gross and it goes to the physical plane, but in its essence it goes all the way up the chain of super consciousness through Christ and cosmic consciousness. So some pretty profound elements in there. That Mike, tell us.
I'm gonna throw another question in there. So when he talks about super consciousness, would that be cosmic consciousness or Christ consciousness, or both of them? Is that?
I think I don't know actually.
Maybe both of them, right?
I don't know. I think essentially there's only one, isn't there? But it's just how much are we in tune with in that, or how much are we able to connect to that? And that is a super consciousness that he starts off this passage with. When super consciousness descends into the realm of imagination, it is called subconsciousness and then consciousness, etc. I'm highly unqualified to talk about this. Hence, I got these readings just directly from Guruji, and I'll let the readers interpret master's readings as opposed to our commentary. Grace.
Yeah, just reading all of this, it's so complex and so difficult to understand. I think it really also like parallels, in this minute, just the idea that we're going to have to advance our science to be able to study these things. I'm hoping to be a scientist of sorts. I'm studying psychology and statistics, and it's humbling to approach that future also with the knowledge that Guruji has brought us of all these different states of consciousness. And I just realize how limited our modern scientific methods are for understanding the nature of existence. I mean, you can't really just send out a survey about this stuff and learn about it. Really, any form of analysis or studies that I've heard of could not even begin to interpret and realize these deeper concepts. So I think it's humbling to just realize science is in its minuscule baby form, and we're going to have to develop our measures and methods to even begin to understand the deeper reality of life.
Yeah, we're going to have to drag it whilst it's dragging its knuckles along this spiritual path that we're on. Mike?
I think that's exactly right. What Grace just said about our state of science, and we can't really wait for science to catch up, right? It doesn't really help us in our own spiritual advancement. I mean, we can obviously work for science and move it forward, but I love how Guruji brings it home in that last paragraph where he says meditation is the method of realizing the connection between one's body and the cosmic energy, right? And that's the one. He gives us an action item. He says, if you actually want to comprehend this, and if you actually want to make use of this, then meditation is your way to get in there. And once you meditate, and once you start realizing all of those things happening inside yourself, then you will be able to understand.
Indeed. Grace?
Yeah, I think that Mike, you made a good point there. The only kind of method that we have right now to understand these is a form of self-study. And nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that if I want the answers to the universe, it's a process of self-work. It's a process of self-study. It's so much easier to study other people, to develop other methods. But, moving forward as, a civilization who wants these deeper answers, right now, the only means really is meditation. And probably the only means indefinitely will always culminate in this final necessity to study yourself, to improve yourself, and to go beyond these finite forms of measurement that modern science currently has.
Indeed. Lost my thought, but the next element is about the crash, the mindless destruction elements, and in this is just a throwaway, just one sentence in there, but I think in divine romance and the yoga ideal of renunciation, there's a really famous amongst us disciples anyway, a really famous section called that we must stand unshaken amidst the crash of breaking worlds. And I remember when I remember at the center we had at one stage we had mice, and everyone was there was a bit of there was a bit of controversy about how we should deal with it, and everyone was getting a bit nervous, and someone was like, no one's really practicing this whole we must stand unshaken amidst the crash of breaking world, seeing as we're getting unnerved by a couple of mice running around the center. That will pretty much do us no harm. Nick, do you want to? I've actually sent you a section on a description of that, and obviously this is I want to refer that back to our the state of the world in terms of the war that's what's happening right now in different parts of the world, and also in this minute obviously is referring heavily to the atomic bomb and the after effects of that, and the impact of scientific discovery, which is often used for military applications. So yeah, Nick, do you want to read that?
Yeah, of course. Periodically throughout its history, the world has gotten into a mess. During times of war, it becomes a torture chamber for millions of human beings. True happiness, lasting happiness, lies only in God, having whom no other gain is greater. In him is the only safety, the only shelter, the only escape from all of our fears. You have no other security in the world, no other freedom. The only true freedom lies in God. So strive deeply to contact him in meditation, morning and night, as well as throughout the day in all work and duties you perform. Yoga teaches that where God is, there is no fear, no sorrow. The successful yogi can stand unshaken amidst the crash of breaking worlds. He is secure in realization. Lord, where I am, there thou must come. I like how this connects the points with the Grace and Mike, so I'm glad we got to share it.
Grace, do you want to continue with that section?
The next part is, when not all the pain of this world, nor even the sufferings of Hades can affect you, you are a king. And that is what you must be. Breaking the limitations of this frail human body, you must manifest immortality. In his poem, Marching Light, the great saint Swami Ram Tirtha wrote, I hitch to my chariot the fates and the gods. In the voice of thunder, proclaim it abroad. Liberty, 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 Om. Hail, O ye ocean, ye dried up, depart. That is to say, before the marching light of your soul, the ocean will be dried up, and mountains will stand aside. Beware, O ye mountains, stand not in my way. Your ribs will be shattered and tattered today. Think of that. Only the liberty of the soul is all conquering, and it is all satisfying and ever newly joyous.
Swami Ram Tirtha's song, that chant that he's just quoted there and referred it to this, standing unshaken amidst the crash of the breaking worlds. I always wondered at that chant. It's so complex and so it's so emotive, and it's so descriptive in terms of how we need to deal with this world as it sometimes goes through its phases of breaking, cycles breaking and repair and rising. I think that is probably the most intriguing chant out of our cosmic chants, isn't it? In terms of its content, and even the melody is quite wild, isn't it? Mike, do you want to chant that one right now?
No.
So yeah, that's a pretty cool section, and again that's from that's from Divine Romance. And that pretty much summarizes, or that pretty much goes through the 3 or 4 different quite deep subjects in the minute. Mike?
Yeah, that chant that you mentioned, it is very interesting because it has a different vibe than a lot of the other chants, right? A lot of the chants, they try to draw you within, are very devotional, because that's kind of the way to God. But this chant, on the other hand, is a bit more, I would say, Rajas themed. It's more like the soul. It basically describes the way of the soul towards liberation, and nothing can stop it. And I don't think there's another chant in the cosmic chants that has the same kind of attitude.
It's like shaking you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Get out of here. don't stay here. Know it now or in 1,000 incarnations, which is which is the I told you I've got a little note. I've got a note in my corridor that points to my meditation room, which says everything else can wait.
Go there.
Yeah, everything else can wait. And then the second part is know it now or in 1,000 incarnations. How many lifetimes do you want to dwell in this ocean of sorrow?
That's such a good idea.
Yeah. And Grace?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I love that idea. I'm definitely going to steal it.
It's not copyrighted, so I'm not going to make any money from this idea, unfortunately. Maybe I should have done that. Prepare these lovely placards. The other images and from the minute are, they again use the image of Guruji in a boat, as this conversation about man, rising from that consciousness and and going away from mindless destruction. There's a picture of that, a famous picture of Guruji on that sailboat sailing slowly away, and then there's the image of an atomic bomb in someone's eye, as if they're just witnessing it, which is quite a moving image. And there's also some very sorrowful music, which with a touch of orchestral kind of choir type feeling. I think I can quite just about hear a choir in there. So yeah, it's quite a good production for the minute and the feeling. And really every minute takes you through this journey, doesn't it? through its own journey, and that's why a podcast on it can be apt. Mike?
Yeah, like you just said, the movie with Guruji on the boat, right? It always, like we said in a previous minute, that it reminds you of the poem God's Boatman, right? And I feel like this movie is playing subtle messages constantly. We talked about this before, and this one is definitely, you know, this world is crazy. It can blow up any minute. Like, be with the guru now. And get out of here.
get on the boat.
Get on the boat now.
The world is thinking. Well, Grace, thank you very much for joining us. You've been a joy to share this minute with. Hope you enjoyed that as much as we did.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Jai Guru.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time. Jai Guru.
Thank you, guys. Jai Guru.
Thank you.